You guys, come in, sit down, lock the door, put your phone on Do Not Disturb. Because what I'm about to walk you through is going to change everything you thought you knew about the Cardi B and Tasha K saga. The autopsy on this story is back. The receipts are pulled up. And what was hiding behind that little quiet $4 million judgment everybody forgot about is not a debt anymore. It's a maze. It's a paper trail maze. It's an LLC labyrinth that somebody built, brick by brick, room by room, signature by signature, while we were over here arguing about wigs and yeast infections and old Twitter screenshots from 2016. And one woman, just one woman, walked up to that maze with a federal complaint, a forensic accountant, 7 exhibits, and a notarized quitclaim deed, and she lit it up like the 4th of July. Listen to me. Listen real close. Because the story the streets are telling you, the version you're getting on Twitter, the version they're feeding you in those 30-second TikToks, that ain't the story. The real story is sitting inside a federal docket in the Southern District of Florida, filed on May 6, 2026, and it has a name, and that name is Cheickna Kebe. And the company behind that name has a name too, and that name is Yelen Entertainment LLC. Write it down, because by the end of this video you're going to understand that Cardi B did not just file a lawsuit. Cardi B exposed an entire architecture, and once you see it you cannot unsee it. So before I drag you into this maze with me, let me set the table. Let me give you the lay of the land, because new people show up to my channel every single day, and I never want you lost in the sauce. Quick recap. In 2019, Cardi B sues a YouTuber gossip blogger named Tasha K. Real name Latasha Cheickna Kebe. Why? Because Cardi said this woman ran a malicious, sustained, year-long campaign of lies. We're talking allegations about drug use, about sexual acts, about STDs, about her child. Cardi said it crossed every line a line could be crossed, and she dragged that case all the way to a federal jury in Georgia. January 2022, the jury comes back. Tasha K is liable. Defamation, invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress. 3-headed verdict. The damages? Just shy of $4 million. With interest, by 2023 it was $3,911,680.95. With more interest by today, it is north of $3.80 to $4 million depending on which filing you read. That is a number that does not lie. Now here is where most of the internet checked out. Most of the internet thought the story ended when that gavel came down. Most of the internet thought, oh okay, Tasha lost, she'll pay, she'll do a podcast about it, life moves on. But that is not what happened. That is not even close to what happened. Because the moment, and I do mean the moment, that verdict hit the docket, somebody somewhere started moving pieces on a chessboard you and I weren't even told existed. And the person moving those pieces, according to this federal lawsuit, was not Tasha. It was her husband, Cheickna Kebe. Pause. Let that sink in. Pause that scroll. Pause whatever you're doing. Because this is the part nobody is telling you. Picture it like this. February 2022, the jury says you owe $4 million. 3 weeks later, March 10, 2022, less than 30 days, a residential property over in Gwinnett County, Georgia, a real piece of dirt with a real address, gets quitclaimed off of Tasha K's name and over onto Cheickna Kebe's name. The price on that deed? $1. One single dollar. Not 1 million. $1 American dollar. For a whole house. Now I don't know what market you living in, but in my market, a house don't go for $1. That ain't a sale. That's not even a yard sale price. That is a transfer dressed up in a costume so it can sneak past the bouncer. And the bouncer in this story is the United States court system trying to collect a judgment for Belcalis Marlenis Almanzar. That's Cardi B's real name. Belcalis Marlenis Almanzar. Y'all remember that name. We're gonna be hearing it for a long time on this case. But that quitclaim deed has a wrinkle in it. A wrinkle that, when I read it, made me literally put down my coffee and say out loud, oh, this is diabolical. The deed is dated March 2022. Okay, that's the date. That's what the document says. But you know when that deed got notarized? You know when a notary actually stamped that thing and put her seal on it and said, yes, I am witnessing this transaction? November of 2024. November 2024. 2.5 years after the date written on the paper. And by the way, by November 2024, what was happening? Tasha K is in active bankruptcy proceedings. There is active collection. There is a federal court watching every move. And in the middle of all of that, somebody pulls out a deed dated March 2022 and gets a notary to slap a stamp on it like it had been sitting in a sock drawer the whole time. Come on now. Come on. The streets ain't dumb. The court ain't dumb. And Cardi B's lawyers, baby, Cardi B's lawyers are not dumb either. Now zoom out with me, because that house is just one room in the maze. That's just the foyer. The real labyrinth is the LLC. Yelen Entertainment, LLC. Filed in Florida. May 31, 2022. Months after the verdict. Months. And here is where you have to get your forensic accountant hat on, because this is the move. This is the trick under the cup. Tasha K's whole business empire, the Unwind with Tasha K platform, the YouTube channel, the merch, the sponsorships, the everything, all of that lived inside a Georgia company called Kebe Studios LLC. Kebe Studios was the entity holding the bag. Kebe Studios was the entity that, alongside Tasha personally, the jury found liable. Kebe Studios was on the hook for $2.9 million of that $4 million judgment. Kebe Studios was the goose that laid the golden YouTube eggs, and Kebe Studios was the goose with the IRS-shaped lien around its neck. So what do you do, allegedly? If your goal is to never let a dollar of those YouTube eggs land in Cardi B's pocket, you don't kill the goose. The goose makes the eggs. You move the goose. You build a brand new goose house in another state, in a state with friendly debtor laws like Florida, and you put a sign on the new goose house that says Yelen Entertainment LLC. Then in the dark of night, you quietly walk the goose, eggs and all, into the new house, lock the door behind you and dissolve the old house. Burn it down. Knock it over. Salt the earth. And when the creditor with the federal judgment comes knocking at the old address, you smile through the curtain and say, "Oh, that company doesn't exist anymore. Sorry. Send your bill to Nobody Street in Nowhere Town in the great state of Try Again." That is what the complaint alleges happened. Not in my words. In the federal complaint's own words, backed by exhibits, backed by tax returns, backed by sworn testimony, backed by a forensic accounting firm called Kapila Mukamal that combed through the books. And what did Kapila Mukamal find? Buckle in. They found that Kebe Studios generated over $1 million in YouTube revenue alone between 2019 and 2023. $1 million. From the same platform where the defamation lived. The same platform where the allegations against Cardi were broadcast. The same platform that the jury said caused harm. $1 million in ad revenue gone through that pipeline. And the forensic firm tracked the cash. They watched it move. They watched the income stream completely shift, completely flip, completely abandon Kebe Studios and migrate over to Yelen Entertainment by September 2022. Same exact month, by the way, that the amended judgment was entered. Same exact month. That's not a coincidence. That's a choreography. That's a dance that somebody rehearsed. And Yelen's own tax return for 2022, attached to the complaint as an exhibit, tells on itself. Gross receipts of $355,957. Revenue source listed? YouTube. Stripe. The exact same revenue sources Kebe Studios had been using. Same pipeline. Same content. Same audience. Same eyeballs. Different shell. Different state. Different name on the door. And the sole shareholder of Yelen Entertainment, LLC? You guessed it. Cheickna Kebe. Not Tasha. Not a third party. Not a holding trust based in the Cayman Islands. The husband. Listed. Alone. As the only person who owns this thing. Now stop, because if you're paying attention, you're already asking the right question. The question is, well, why does that matter? Why does it matter if the husband owns the new company? Because here is the legal stiletto in this whole filing. A money judgment like the one Cardi has against Tasha attaches to Tasha's assets, Tasha's income, Tasha's property, Tasha's bank accounts, Tasha's everything. But the husband is a separate legal person. The husband is not on that judgment. And if the husband owns the company that owns all the income that used to be Tasha's income, then on paper, in the eyes of a court, that money does not belong to Tasha anymore. It belongs to him. And you cannot, generally, garnish a wife's debt out of a husband's separately titled business account. Not without doing exactly what Cardi just did, which is filing a brand new federal lawsuit, naming the husband and screaming at the top of your legal lungs, "Your Honor, this is a fraudulent transfer, please undo it. Please call this what it is. Please rip the costume off this transaction and show the court what's underneath." That's what the complaint asks for. It asks for the transfers to be voided. It asks for a constructive trust to be slapped on all of those moved assets. It asks for an injunction so that nothing else can be moved while this case is alive. It asks for the full money judgment jointly against Kebe and Yelen, plus interest, plus everything else. It is not a polite request. It is a federal harpoon, aimed at a maze, and the harpoon has Cardi's name on it. Let me take you deeper. Let me take you down to the basement of this maze, because there is a second scheme, and the second scheme is even more intimate. The first scheme is about the business. The second scheme, according to the complaint, is about Tasha's personal money, her actual paycheck, her actual living room cash. Allegedly, Cheickna Kebe didn't just move the business. He rerouted Tasha's personal salary and earnings through Yelen's bank accounts. He allegedly removed her name from bank accounts where her payroll used to land. He allegedly arranged things so that Tasha would no longer be paid directly, ever, by anyone. Why? Because if your paycheck doesn't have your name on it, a creditor can't intercept it. If you are not the account holder, the bank does not freeze you when a writ of execution shows up. That is the play. That is the entire play. And what makes it land, what makes this complaint not just a theory but a thunderclap, is that Kebe allegedly admitted it. Under oath. In a deposition. Multiple times. The complaint quotes him directly. When he was asked why Kebe Studios got shut down, he said, and I am paraphrasing from the public record, that the company was not being operated properly and that it had a judgment against it. When he was asked why he accepted the Georgia property for $1, his answer was, in his own words, I wanted to help her avoid garnishment. When he was asked directly, point blank, if he was helping his wife avoid paying Cardi B, his answer was yes. 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 You guys. I need you to feel this with me. In a deposition, the man, under penalty of perjury, said the quiet part out loud. Said yes. Said I helped her. Said I did it on purpose. Said I knew exactly what I was doing. And on top of that, the complaint tells us that a Georgia judge in open court after the verdict looked Tasha K and Cheickna Kebe both dead in the eye and warned them, do not transfer assets to third parties. Do not move things around. Do not play games with the judgment. And what does Cheickna Kebe testify to later? He testifies in essence that he is, quote, smart enough to understand a warning from a judge. He understood it. He just allegedly went and did it anyway. That, right there, that is what lawyers in the back of the room call badges of fraud. Those are the little tells that judges look for when they have to decide if a transfer was a real business move or a costume. And let me list them out for you because this is the part where you go from gossip viewer to legal scholar in 2 minutes flat. Badge number 1. The transfer happens right after the lawsuit or the judgment. Quitclaim deed March 10, 2022. Judgment, January and February 2022. Less than 30 days apart. Check. Badge number 2. The transfer is to a close family member or insider. Husband. Wife. Check. Badge number 3. The transferor keeps using the asset. Tasha K is still living a Tasha K lifestyle. Still posting. Still making money. The Unwind with Tasha K brand still rolls. Just under a new corporate flag. Check. Badge number 4. The price is suspicious or fake. $1 for a whole house. Check, double check, triple check. Badge number 5. The transferor was insolvent or about to be. A $4 million judgment against you means you are not in the prime of your liquidity. Check. Badge number 6. The transfer was concealed. Quitclaim deed dated March 2022. Notarized November 2024. That's not concealed. That's not hidden. That's not weird. Check. Badge number 7. The transfer happened despite a court warning. The judge literally said do not do this and the complaint says they did it anyway. Check. 7 for 7. 7 out of 7 badges. That is not one of those tight, this could go either way fact patterns. That is a textbook. That is the kind of fact pattern a law professor gives a first-year law student on the final exam and says, identify the fraudulent transfer. And the student gets an A by just writing yes. Now I want to slow it down. I want to take a breath with you because I know this video is long, I know your eyes might be tired, but you need to hear this next part with both ears wide open. Because so far I've been talking about lawyers and badges and exhibits and depositions, but there is a human story under this paperwork. There is a woman's story. There is a black woman's story. There is a We Don't Panuan story. There is a Cardi B story. Cardi B, born Belcalis Marlenis Almanzar, from the Bronx. A woman who, in 2019, did what they tell you to do. They tell you when somebody lies on you, go through the system. Use the courts. Don't fight in the streets. Don't curse them out on Instagram Live. Be a lady. Hire the lawyer. Pay the retainer. Sit through the depositions. Show up in court. Trust the process. And she did. She did exactly that. She trusted the process. She won. The jury said yes, you were defamed, here's your verdict, here's your nearly $4 million. The 11th Circuit, the Federal Court of Appeals, looked at that verdict, kicked the tires on it, and affirmed it. Affirmed. Game over. And then nothing. Years go by. Years. We are now in 2026. And that woman has not collected one single dollar. Not one. The proof of claim in the bankruptcy case at the time of the 2023 petition was $3,911,680.95. Has that been paid? No. The judgment against Kebe Studios? Unsatisfied. The judgment against Tasha personally? Unsatisfied. Tasha files Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2023. The bankruptcy court has been chewing on it. There has been a non-disparagement clause in her bankruptcy plan. She has, according to the bankruptcy court, been found in civil contempt for repeatedly violating that clause. And on top of that, allegedly, the husband is over here building a Yelen-shaped fortress around the YouTube income so that even if you crack open Tasha's piggy bank, you find lint. You see what I mean now when I say it's a maze? You see how it's not one wall, it's a series of walls? You see how it's a property transfer plus a business shell plus a name change on the bank accounts plus a husband shareholder plus a notarization shenanigan plus a contempt order plus a bankruptcy stay plus and plus and plus? Each one of these moves alone would be sketchy. All of them together in sequence in coordination, that's not sketchy. That is a system. That is a strategy. That is, the complaint says, fraudulent. And here is the part that the streets are gonna sleep on if I don't drag it into the sunlight myself. Cardi B did not file this lawsuit because she felt like it. Cardi B did not file this lawsuit because Tasha said something on a podcast. Cardi B filed this lawsuit on May 6, 2026, because Florida law gives you 4 years to challenge a fraudulent transfer. 4 years from the date of the transfer. The earliest transfer her team could find evidence of? May 2022, when Yelen Entertainment was formed. At 4 years. May 2026. She filed on May 6, 2026. She filed inside the door before it closed. By the skin of her teeth. With a window of less than a month before the statute of limitations could potentially have rung the bell on her. That is not somebody filing on a whim. That is somebody who has been watching, waiting, building the file, gathering the exhibits, hiring forensic accountants, and pulling the trigger at the precise moment the law allows. Receipts. We talking receipts. 7 exhibits attached to that complaint. 7. Let me list them because I know the document hawks in the comments love when I do this. Exhibit 1, the original defamation judgment from Georgia. Exhibit 2, the amended judgment. Exhibit 3, the 11th Circuit ruling affirming the verdict. Exhibit 4, the forensic accounting workup from Kapila Mukamal. Exhibit 5, Yelen Entertainment's 2022 tax return. Exhibit 6, the quitclaim deed for the Gwinnett County property. And I'm folding in a 7th basket of supporting paperwork. That is not a complaint you draft in a weekend. That is a complaint somebody has been ironing for months. Maybe longer. Maybe a year. Now I know what the comments are about to say. I see y'all already, I see the typing. Some of y'all are about to say, but Tasha is in Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Doesn't that block the lawsuit? Doesn't the automatic stay protect her? Y'all be listening. Y'all be listening. I respect it. The answer is yes. The bankruptcy stay protects Tasha as the debtor. That is why Tasha K, by name, is not a defendant in this lawsuit. Look at the caption. It says Yelen Entertainment LLC and Cheickna Kebe. It does not say Latasha Transrina Kebe. She is the ghost in the machine of every paragraph in this complaint, but she is not legally named. Because Cardi cannot, right now, sue her directly without bankruptcy court permission. But Yelen? Yelen is not in bankruptcy. The husband? He is not in bankruptcy. They are what the law calls non-debtor third parties. And the complaint explicitly preserves the right to come back at them around the bankruptcy like a Pac-Man going around a wall. Cardi's team even did something else clever. After filing the suit, they immediately filed a motion saying, look, we filed it to beat the statute of limitations, but we are willing to put it on pause until the bankruptcy case is resolved. So she didn't blow up the bankruptcy. She didn't fight the trustee. She didn't muscle into the bankruptcy lane. She filed her stake in the ground, planted her flag and said, when y'all done in there, I'm waiting right out here. That is chess. That is patience. That is grown woman litigation. Whoever Cardi B's legal team is, can I get a round of applause in the comments? Because that work is tight. That work is clinical. That work is the difference between somebody who wins a verdict and somebody who collects on a verdict. Okay, let's parallel universe this for a minute because that is my favorite thing to do and you know it. Parallel universe number 1. Let's say the judge agrees with Cardi. Let's say the court looks at the Yelen filing, looks at the quitclaim deed, looks at the depositions and says, you know what, this looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. The court voids the transfers. The Georgia property snaps back to Tasha's name. Yelen's bank accounts become collectible. The constructive trust drops. And suddenly that $3.80 to $4 million plus interest is no longer a piece of paper. So check. Cardi gets paid. Tasha and Kebe lose the maze. And every single asset that walked through the corridors of that maze gets walked right back out. Parallel universe number 2. Let's say Kebe's lawyers come back swinging. They argue Yelen is a legitimate independent business. They argue the Georgia property was a normal interspousal transfer that happens all the time. They argue the bankruptcy stay shields everything that touches Tasha. They argue the statute of limitations actually did run on some of the claims. They argue. Then we are in for a long knockdown drag-out fight. Depositions on top of depositions. Subpoenas to Yelen's accountants. Subpoenas to the notary who stamped that deed. Forensic experts called as witnesses. This case could stretch into 2028, maybe 2029. And in the meantime, the interest keeps building. Every day that goes by, Cardi's number gets bigger. Parallel universe number 3. The settlement universe. The universe nobody talks about, but the one that actually ends most of these cases. Somewhere along the way, Kebe's team and Cardi's team sit at a long mahogany table. There is bottled water. There is air conditioning. There is a mediator. And they figure out a number. A number that is real. A number that gets wired. A number that closes this chapter. Because the longer this drags, the more public this becomes. And the more public this becomes, the worse it looks for Yelen's business partners, for the bankruptcy plan, for every brand that wants to do business with that whole side of the equation. There is a price at which everybody just wants this to go away. And maybe one day that price gets paid. But you know what? Let me give you one more parallel universe, the one I haven't seen anybody talk about. Parallel universe number 4. The chilling effect universe. Because if this case lands the way Cardi's team is pitching it, if a federal judge in the Southern District of Florida actually rules that yes, you can build an LLC after a verdict, move all the income into it, put your spouse's name on it, and that counts as fraud, that ruling is not just about Cardi and Tasha and Kebe. That ruling is a flare gun fired straight up over the entire creator economy. Because how many YouTubers, podcasters, gossip bloggers, influencers do you think have, at this exact moment, a husband-managed LLC sitting in the wings, ready to catch them if a lawsuit lands? How many? Be honest. The answer is a lot. A lot. This is a common structure in the influencer space. So if this ruling lands the way Cardi wants it to land, the entire creator economy is going to wake up the next morning and look at its LLC paperwork with a brand new sense of dread. That is a precedent. That is a tide change. And it would all start because a woman from the Bronx refused to let it go. Let me pull back. Let me catch my breath. Because this story, when I really sit with it, is not just legal. It is moral. It is a question. The question is this. What does a court system mean when the judgment cannot be collected? What does justice mean when justice on paper does not translate to justice in a bank account? You can win the case and lose the war. You can have a jury say in the loudest possible voice you were wronged, and still wake up 4 years later and find out that the person who wronged you has bought a bigger house, built a bigger studio, hired a bigger audience, and still has not paid you $1. What does that say? What does it say about who the system protects? What does it say about what the system thinks of you? That is the question Cardi is asking with this lawsuit, even if she never says it out loud in those words. And here is the wild part. Cardi B does not need this money. Let's be real. Cardi B is a Grammy winner. She is a Met Gala headline. She just performed I don't know how many sold-out shows. She is fine. The money in terms of her own life is not the point. So why? Why fight? Why spend lawyer hours? Why keep this case alive for half a decade? You know why. You know why. Because the principle matters. Because if you let this slide, the next person who tries the same costume on the same kind of transfer will think they can get away with it too. Because at some point a woman says, no, you don't get to lie on me, lose the case, and then build a maze to hide from the bill. You don't. You just don't. Now let me put on my journalist hat for a second and give you the cold caveats. Because I never want to be one of these channels that tells you only one side of the casino. Everything in this lawsuit is an allegation. 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 Cheickna Kebe has not been found liable. Yelen Entertainment has not been found liable. They have every right to defend themselves. They have every right to file an answer. They have every right to call their own witnesses, file their own motions, and contest every single number in the forensic accounting. The American legal system runs on innocent until proven liable in a civil case. So when I tell you what the complaint alleges, I am telling you what is on the page of a public filing. I am not telling you what a court has decided. The court has not decided. The court will decide. And we, the people on the other side of these screens, get to watch it happen. Second caveat. Some of these schemes, the way they are described in the complaint, they could turn out to be normal estate planning. Couples transfer property between each other all the time. Spouses get added and removed from bank accounts all the time. Businesses get restructured, dissolved, reformed all the time. Not every restructuring is a fraud. Not every transfer is a hide. Sometimes a dollar is just a dollar between two married people. The court is going to look at intent. The court is going to look at timing. The court is going to look at the depositions and the records and decide if this falls inside normal family business or outside of it. But, The reason I am leaning the way I am leaning, the reason the streets are leaning the way the streets are leaning, is the timing. The timing is the killer. 3 weeks after a $4 million verdict, a Gwinnett County house goes for $1. 3 months after the verdict, a brand new LLC opens its doors in another state. 6 months after the verdict, the income has fully migrated. And a husband in a deposition under oath says, yes, I helped her avoid garnishment. Timing, timing, timing. Timing is the difference between a regular Tuesday and an alibi. Timing is the witness that doesn't lie. Timing is the receipt. Speaking of receipts, let's talk about why this matters to you. Yes, you, the person watching this video, the person who has nothing to do with Cardi B, nothing to do with Tasha K, nothing to do with Cheickna Kebe, nothing to do with Yelen Entertainment. Why does this matter to you? Because every single one of us, the moment we sign a lease, the moment we accept a job, the moment we sue or get sued, we get plugged into the same system that just had its skirt lifted. And when you understand how the system can be played, you also understand how it can be played on you. You understand that a husband or a wife or a sibling or a business partner can, with enough planning and enough nerve, build a wall between your judgment and your collection. And once you understand that, you ask different questions when you sign different papers. You ask who else is on this title. You ask who controls this LLC. You ask where does the income land. You ask the questions a forensic accountant would ask. And that is education that this whole Cardi B versus Kebe saga is giving you for free. Drink it in. Now back to the maze. Let me give you the map one more time because I want you to lock this geometry in your head. Picture a triangle. At the top of the triangle you have the judgment. $3.8 to $4 million. Federal. Affirmed. Final. Locked. That is the apex. Now follow the lines down. On the bottom left corner of the triangle you have Kebe Studios LLC, the Georgia Company, the Judgment Company, the Dissolved Company, the Empty Company. Bottom right corner of the triangle you have Yelen Entertainment LLC, the Florida Company, the New Company, the Full Company, the Income Company, and the line between Kebe Studios and Yelen, that line is the alleged fraudulent transfer. That line is the chute. That line is the slide. Income walked down that slide from one company to the other. And inside the triangle, somewhere in the middle, you have a Gwinnett County house and a quitclaim deed dated March 2022, notarized November 2024, sitting like a hidden room. The lawsuit's job is to expose every line of that triangle and put a number on every transaction. And the prosecutor of this triangle, the woman walking in with a flashlight, is Belcalis Marlenis Almanzar, the Bronx, the Drip, the Grammy, the Mom, the Boss. The lawsuit is filed. The clock is ticking. The exhibits are stapled. The depositions are taken. And somewhere in a Florida courthouse, a judge is going to look at this thing and decide whether the maze stands or whether the maze falls. So what do we do with this? What do we, the audience, do? First, we pay attention. We do not let this case die in the news cycle the way the streets are going to want it to, because it is the kind of case that, if you blink, you miss the next big ruling. Second, we do not get lazy with the facts. Cheickna Kebe, Yelen Entertainment, LLC, Kebe Studios, LLC, Southern District of Florida, May 6, 2026, May 31, 2022, March 10, 2022, November 2024. These dates are the spine of this story. Memorize them. Third, we keep the gossip honest. There will be people in our comment sections, my comment section, your comment section, who try to twist this into something it is not. Don't let them. Don't let them tell you Cardi is petty. Don't let them tell you Cardi is hungry. Don't let them tell you she is doing it for clout. Cardi is doing it for the same reason any person who wins a verdict and never sees a dime would do it. Because that's the bill. And the bill is due. I want to close with a thought. Just a thought. I have been doing this for a long time, and I have watched 100 celebrity lawsuits come and go. Most of them are noise. Most of them are press release versus press release. Most of them settle in the dark, get sealed, and you and I never see the documents. But every once in a while, a case slips through the cracks of the press release machine and lands on a public docket fully clothed in exhibits, with deposition quotes, with tax returns, with a forensic accountant's signature. And when that happens, the public, you and me, we get a rare window into how money actually moves between rich people who don't want to pay other rich people. We get to see the wiring, the plumbing, the maze. And once you see the maze, baby, you don't go back to thinking the world is flat. Cardi B did not just file a lawsuit. Cardi B pulled a curtain. Behind that curtain is an entire architecture of LLCs, deeds, depositions, dissolutions, and dollars. And by the time this case is over, somebody is going to know what every line in that architecture really does. The streets are watching. The court is watching. The bankruptcy trustee is watching. The IRS, probably, is reading the exhibits with a glass of wine and a calculator. And Cardi, with her lawyers and her receipts and her 4-year-old judgment that refuses to die, is standing right there at the front of the maze, with that little federal harpoon asking one question. The same question she has been asking in court, in motions, in depositions, in interviews, in song lyrics for half a decade. The question is simple. Where is my money? Where is my money? That is not a gossip question. That is a federal question. And in a Florida courtroom somewhere sometime in the next few months, a judge is going to start answering it. One ruling at a time. One exhibit at a time. One brick of the maze at a time. You guys, I want you to do me a favor. Hit that like button so this lands in front of every single person who is sleeping on this story. Drop the words LLC maze in the comments so I know you watched this whole thing and I can come find you and reply. Hit subscribe because we are going to be on this case file by file, hearing by hearing, deposition by deposition. There is more, so much more that has not made the headlines yet. The exhibits in this lawsuit are deeper than what I gave you today. And as the bankruptcy court keeps ruling, as more contempt orders drop, as more transfers get traced, this thing is going to keep cracking open like a piñata full of paperwork. I will be here when it does. I will go live the second the next big ruling drops. I will read the docket so you don't have to. But until then, remember this. A maze is just a wall in fancy clothes. A wall can be knocked down. And the woman swinging the hammer right now is from the Bronx, and her name is Belcalis Marlenis Almanzar. I'll talk to y'all later. Stay watching. Stay paying attention. And do not let them tell you this story is small. This story is big. This story is precedent. This story is the future of how creators do or do not get held accountable. We are watching history get drafted in real time in a federal docket. And we are not going to look away. Bye for now, you guys. Bye. You guys, hold on, before you let this video close out on you, I gotta drop one more layer. Because in the editing bay of my brain there is a section I almost cut out, and then I said no, this is the part that nobody else is gonna give them, so let me give it to you. The forensic accountant angle. The Kapila Mukamal angle. I want you to understand why that name matters, because that's not a name you just throw into a federal complaint. Kapila Mukamal is a real forensic accounting and restructuring firm out of Florida. They get hired when somebody needs a CPA who can read between the lines of a QuickBooks file, the way a homicide detective reads a crime scene. When a forensic firm like that signs their name to a workup that gets attached to a federal complaint, they are putting their professional license on the line. They are not playing. They are not guessing. They are not vibing. They are testifying in writing that the numbers move the way the complaint says they move. Now think about what that means for Cheickna Kebe's lawyers. They cannot just stand up in court and say, nah, none of that happened. They have to attack the forensic accounting itself. Which means they have to hire their own forensic accountant. Which means depositions get scheduled. Which means receipts get subpoenaed. Bank statements. Wire transfers. Stripe payouts. YouTube AdSense reports. Every single rail of revenue that runs through that media operation, all of it, has to come out into the daylight. The lawsuit is the appetizer. Discovery is the meal. And speaking of writs, let me give you one more juicy nugget that didn't get the press it deserved. A writ of execution. That's a specific legal weapon. It's the document a creditor uses to actually seize property to satisfy a judgment. Not just to ask for it. To take it. According to reporting on this case, a writ of execution was filed against Tasha K and her company. That is a sheriff-grade enforcement tool. And the fact that the writ existed and still produced no collection is part of why Cardi's team built this fraudulent transfer case. They tried the regular route. The regular route hit walls. So they came back with a custom-shaped harpoon designed for the specific maze in front of them. Strategic and precise. Let me also give you the human note on Cheickna Kebe because the comments will ask, who even is this man? Cheickna Kebe is Tasha K's husband. He is a business partner. He is the named sole shareholder of Yelen Entertainment, LLC. And in deposition testimony, he comes across, per the complaint quotes, as somebody who is fully aware of what he was doing. He understood the judge's warning. He understood the judgment. He understood the garnishment risk. The complaint is saying, in essence, this entire maze did not build itself, and the man holding the blueprints is right here, Your Honor. His name is Cheickna Kebe. Please ask him under oath about that $1. One more thing, and then I really am going to let you go. The bankruptcy court already came down on Tasha K in May for civil contempt. Civil contempt means you violated a court order, and the court is mad about it. The order Tasha allegedly violated was a non-disparagement clause inside her own bankruptcy plan. A clause that, in plain English, basically says, Stop talking about Cardi B in the way the jury found you liable for. And what did the court find? Found that she kept doing it. The court ordered her to pay Cardi's attorney fees going all the way back to March 2025. That is months of legal billing transferred onto her tab on top of the original judgment. The bill is growing. The bill is alive. The bill is breathing. And that bill is what is sitting underneath this entire Yelen lawsuit. Because if the bill keeps growing while the income keeps flowing through Yelen, the math of avoidance gets harder and harder to maintain. Final thought before I sign off, you guys, and I mean it this time. The reason I really wanted to make this video is because too many of the takes I have seen online have framed this case as a celebrity gossip beef. As Cardi versus Tasha, round 888. And that framing is small. That framing is lazy. The real story is bigger than Cardi and bigger than Tasha. The real story is what happens to a federal judgment in the age of LLCs, shell companies, interstate transfers, and crypto-adjacent income streams. The real story is whether the United States court system can keep up with the speed at which modern internet money moves. The real story is whether the law is fast enough, sharp enough, and willing enough to chase the dollar wherever the dollar runs. And right now, on May 6, 2026, in the Southern District of Florida, the test case for that question has a name. And the name is Almanzar versus Kebe and Yelen Entertainment, LLC.